Hi everyone, this is Nina from Eat Allergy Safe. Eat Allergy Safe is all about helping you live with allergies, intolerances, free from diets and special dietary restrictions. It's not about missing out, it's about doing things differently. Today I'm going to be showing you all how to make the best chocolate fudge cake, which is dairy free, it's egg free, it's nut free, it's soya free, it's peanut free, gluten free, wheat free, and also kind of paleo friendly, suitable for vegetarians, suitable for vegans, and so delicious. It's fudgy, it's chocolatey, it's covered in fudgy chocolatey icing, and it's perfect for birthday cakes, it's perfect for tea time, and it's perfect as a decadent chocolatey treat.
So let's have a look at our ingredients. So first we have our gluten-free flour mix, and in the recipe card that's attached to this video tutorial you will be able to see that it's made up of rice flour, coconut flour, bicarbonate of soda, baking powder, gluten-free, make sure it's gluten-free, and this is what's going to give you a really beautiful, really moist, yummy, rich, or help make it a really rich cake. This is a cake mix that I've come up with. Next, we've got our dark muscovado sugar. Now, I love to use dark muscovado sugar because I just find that it has such a deep sugary flavour, and unlike most cakes, I prefer to have a reduced sugar content. And you've also got to keep in mind the other sugary aspects of the cake when you're determining sugar. Not only that, dark muscovado sugar, when it cooks, it becomes so like fudgy and caramelly, and it's such a beautiful flavour, and I find it a lot nicer to eat actually than caster sugar. I find caster sugar it's a bit, well, it does taste refined, it's a bit too sweet and fake for me anyway. So, but especially in this cake, it is a chocolate fudge cake, so why not add to the depth of the flavour with dark muscovado sugar? If you have brown sugar, soft brown sugar at home, this will also do. Next is our raw apple, and the raw apple actually is partly it helps bind the cake. It also adds moisture to the cake, and what I've also found that when you add raw apple to a cake, it helps with the fudginess of the flavour and the texture, so that not only when you bite into the cake you've got a fudgy flavour, it feels fudgy, and I think that's such a great part of the experience of eating cake, is also the taste and texture in your mouth. Next, we have our dairy-free chocolate drops. Now this is an incredibly important part of our chocolate fudge cake, having chocolate. Make sure when you're looking for dairy-free chocolate that it is actually dairy-free. Check the labels for allergens and any other things that you may be allergic to. Personally, if you're vegan, make sure you check that it's suitable for you too. Now you can also use bars of chocolate and just break it up into smaller pieces, and we will be blending this, and when chocolate is used in a recipe you can melt it before or you can blend it. I chose to blend it in this recipe. It just helps create air pockets in the cake to make it a little bit lighter, and then also the flavour spreads throughout the cake in a really lovely way. It just makes it more chocolatey, more rich, and I think that's, well, if you've got a chocolate fudge cake, you might as well make it chocolatey. Next, our hot chocolate and black coffee. Now, when you make gluten-free, allergy-safe, especially when it's dairy and egg-free cakes, you need to add quite a lot of moisture to the cake. This not only helps with rising, I know it might sound a bit weird, but it does. It not only helps with rising, it also helps with moisture, and especially this flour mix, it's a very thirsty mix. So you'll be doing this in two parts. First you'll be making up the hot chocolate, and then you'll be making up the black coffee. And I prefer to have hot mixtures going in, because what I've found, it keeps the cake from getting too cold, and it helps with the rising. Next, we have our light olive oil. I choose to use oil because, again, this helps with moisture. It is also naturally dairy-free, it's naturally gluten-free, it's naturally egg-free. You can use extra virgin if you'd like, but you may end up with a bit of an olive oil or an olivey flavour to your cake. If that's something you want to adapt, go for it. Choose to use light olive oil, and specifically light, because it's light in colour, but it's also light in taste, so you can't actually taste the olive. You could also use other vegetable oils, like sunflower or vegetable oil if you have that. I prefer to go for a pure oil because I know exactly what's in it. I like olive oil better than other oils. I just find it's healthier for me, but completely up to you. I haven't tried coconut oil in this recipe, but I'm pretty sure it would do amazingly well, especially if you've got coconut flour as well. Next, vinegar. Vinegar is used to help with rising. As many of you may know, if you eat gluten-free cake, sometimes you have a problem with rising. So the vinegar, and especially with egg-free cakes as well, because the eggs are there to help the cake rise as well as bind it and make it strong. So with vinegar, you've already got bicarbonate of soda and baking powder in the cake mix. The vinegar reacts with the baking powder and bicarbonate and helps the cake to rise in the oven under the heat. And I mean, think about when you were a kid, did you make volcanoes and use bicarbonate of soda and vinegar to make it erupt? It's exactly that. So that's happening in the cake. You can use apple vinegar, you can use cider vinegar, you can use white wine vinegar. If you are celiac or very intolerant, or if you've got a wheat allergy, make sure you use one that hasn't been contaminated. Malt vinegar has got barley in it, so that's got gluten. Make sure you check the labels and use a vinegar that's suitable for you. Next, let's look at the equipment. Now I'm using everyday household items, such as a mixing bowl. You could use any sort of mixing bowl. You want a large one. When I was at uni, I used a saucepan or a big pot to mix cake mix actually in. So anything round, mixing bowl's great. You need an 8-inch loose-bottomed baking tin. Now I choose to use loose-bottomed because with gluten-free, dairy-free and egg-free baking, the cakes are quite, well, they're delicate. They don't have the egg in and they don't have the gluten in, and that's part of the integral structure of a cake. It helps what makes it strong, and it's easier to get it out of the tin because it's stronger. So with a gluten-free, egg-free cake, use a loose-bottom tin. You're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. You should also grease it with your oil. I like to make the cake, pour in the oil, and then use any remnants of oil from the rest of the jug. You could just use it from the bottle, up to you. And I put that on a little bit of kitchen roll and then wipe it round the insides of the baking tin and the bottom. I cut out a round piece of baking paper. You could also use greaseproof paper, but I find that baking paper is better. And then stick it to the bottom of your loose-bottom baking tin. And there you have it. It's a greased and lined tin. Next, we have our simple household utensils that we're going to need for this cake. So you will need a peeler to peel your apples. You will need a measuring spoon to measure out your vinegar. You will need a little grater to grate your apple. You'll also need some mixing spoons. So as you can see in the bowls with the flour, the sugar and the coffee and hot chocolate mix, I've also got some spoons. So you may not need as many, but for this tutorial I had one in each bowl. But one big mixing spoon to mix your cake mix will be quite sufficient. Okay, that's it. Those are all the equipment and the ingredients you'll need to make this fabulous cake. Oh, not to mention your oven. So that's the final thing that you will need. And now, what's next is to start showing you how to bake this cake. And that's one of my favourite parts. So, there's all the ingredients. Let's get baking. Just look at that cake, doesn't it look good? So now that we know what ingredients we're going to be using and the equipment we're going to need to make our decadent chocolate fudge cake, let's move over to how we're going to make it. So first up, we need to preheat our oven and grease and line our cake tin. Second, let's mix up our gluten-free flour mix and our dark muscovado sugar. There we go, give it a good mix. Now we're going to be blending our dairy-free chocolate drops, and we're going to set aside and use them later. Now we'll be preparing our apple. Let's grate and peel our fresh apple. Put that in your bowl. And now we have our oil, vinegar and hot chocolate mix. Put it all in a jug. Add your vinegar. And let's mix it all up. There we go, we want it to be really well incorporated. Add that to your flour and grated apple. And then again, we start mixing. There we go, keep going. It's going to look a bit crumbly, but that's okay, don't worry. Now we're adding our coffee. And you want it nice and hot, and then you give it a good mix and it'll start to look a bit more like batter. There you go, keep mixing until it's well incorporated. Now add your chocolate drops that you've blitzed up in your food blender. And your cake batter is ready. How easy was that? Now time to bake. That's it, spoon in your cake mix into your loose bottom cake tin, which is greased and lined. Make sure of that, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get the cake out. Smooth it down all the way to the edge. There you go. And now pop it in the oven. And you're going to bake it for 30 minutes uncovered. And then you're going to take it out and cover it with a little bit of foil. And then you're going to be able to put it back in and cook for another 15 minutes. And then you're going to have a really moist, really evenly and well cooked cake. And there you have it. It's time for decorating. Now that your cake is ready to ice, it is time to make our chocolate fudge icing. You could also make your chocolate fudge icing while the cake's in the oven. You do have half an hour, 45 minutes, so you could do it in advance. But if you don't worry. You'll have the time when the cake is cooling to make it too. Let's take a look at our ingredients. We have our cake, of course. We have icing sugar, cocoa powder, also dairy-free chocolate drops, a little bit more, why not? It's a chocolate fudge cake. And we also have our vegetable fat. And you can use brands like Trex. Vegetable fat is just a solid fat made from vegetable oil, so it's suitable for those on a dairy-free diet, an egg-free diet, those who are vegan, those with allergies and intolerances to dairy, egg, and any animal proteins. And it is so easy. All you need is to put your room temperature fat in a bowl. That's very important. Makes it easier to blend with your blender. As you can see, it's really easy. And that's because it's room temperature. Next goes in your icing sugar and cocoa powder. So you want to weigh those out, and then you're going to sift them in. Now be careful, because as you can see, it's very light, so the powders will kind of spread out a little bit and you'll have a smell of sugar. Give it a mix, and you'll mix it into the vegetable fat, and this will also help it from spraying everywhere when you blend it, as you can see. Next, we're going to melt our chocolate. I did mine in the microwave, or you can do it over a pan of boiling water. We put that in our mix and add a little bit of vanilla extract. Then we're going to whisk it. And it's going to look like sticky breadcrumbs now. It's going to look really fudgy. Now we're going to add a little bit of dairy-free milk. You can also use water. And this is going to make it a little bit easier to spread. There you go. I mean, it looks so buttery and gooey and fudgy. And that's it. That is how you make the best chocolatey fudgy icing that is dairy-free, egg-free, suitable for vegans, it's gluten-free, it's nut-free, and it's so yummy. And now it's time to ice the cake. Let's get going with icing the cake. To ice your cake, all you're going to need your chocolate fudge cake, cool, you want it to be cool, and also the chocolate fudge icing that you've just made. And then all you need is a knife or a spatula. I've chosen to use a spatula. So pop your icing all on the top of the cake. And now you're going to use your knife, your spatula, to spread it across the top. Try and do it evenly. And you want to spread it all the way to the edges. There you go, keep going. And why not try and make a pattern? There you go, I've decided to go from side to side, just a little bit rustic. And that's it. That is how you make and ice a chocolate fudge cake. And then I've decided to melt some more chocolate and drip it all over the top. Well, how are you going to decorate it? You could have chocolate flakes, you could have sprinkles, you could have melted chocolate like I've done. So how are you going to decorate it? Send me a picture of your chocolate fudge cake when you're done, maybe even when you're trying it for the first time. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for joining this class, and I am so looking forward to seeing your chocolate fudge cakes.